Ding, 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 ding. That's where it's at.
Actually, the inner is technically correct for people for performance as well.
Oh, yeah?
Depending on the sound you want, but
Wait, you get different sounds out of hitting the inside and the outside of the triangle?
well, if you wanted a softer sound, like if you wanted to like hit it, you probably go from the outside, but and when you're doing like a roll, you want to do it not like that, but in the corner.
In the corner? Oh, look at that. Can you buzz it?
Was it?
Yeah.
There's no rebound.
Are we live already? Fantastic. I'm so glad that our faithful Bible study YouTube attenders get to hear riveting conversations about triangle, proper technique for playing the triangle. That's what I know they all tuned in for. Explore the space. Really explore the space. Time to get moving indeed. I got here at 8:06. I'm usually here just a little before 8. I got here at 8:06. The doors were unlocked. The lights were on. The AC was set. I was like luxurious. I'm like one of those mega church pastors. I just walk in and it's done. Oh. I am going to stall for just a couple minutes more while we get those doors closed. Good morning, class.
Good morning.
Well, it's over. VBS is behind us. World Cup is over. I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my summer. Countdown to football? Yeah, you're right. I think they start playing soccer again in August. We're talking different football. You know, I do live in Texas, and if I go to a football game, I will enjoy myself and get excited about the game. But if I'm not physically present at a football game, I don't even watch the Super Bowl anymore. I mean, I you know, again, socially, I'm a social football watcher. You know what I mean? And it's funny because we're not like a football household, so whenever we go to the game, because we go to a Liberty Hill High School game every year, generally. And I'm always trying to explain to my son the rules. It's arcane, man. Yeah, yeah. Are you? Just trade you off, or? You are the voice of Liberty Hill football. We'll just take him to Liberty Hill.
First weekend, I have Thursday night,
Yeah. So when we were doing VBS and we had our dismissal, our method was I was brought cards of the kids who've been checked out, and I would call out their name and they would go mute their parent. And I found I was doing like baseball announcer voice. You heard it, right? Next up, we have Brett King. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Doors are closed. People are in. I think we're ready. You guys ready to get started? All right. Genesis. We have been studying Genesis. We've come a long way. We are actually to sort of the last generation of characters in the book of Genesis. Because we are, Jacob has had his children. He is now Israel, and those children are grown men. Well, I mean, some of them are women, but his children are grown, and so the story will focus on them for the final leg of Genesis. And so we had Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. We're going to follow Joseph for the tail end of the book. I glossed a couple chapters because I want to just stick with the Joseph story, keep moving. We're probably going to gloss one more chapter. Not that it's not good. In fact, it is good and important. It does tell the story of one of Jesus' ancestors. So, but I'd like to be focused, finish the book, and get on with things. Get on to our next study, I think. I'm feeling antsy, you know? So, we're still probably a couple months out from finishing, I would bet. But not too early to start thinking about what you would like to study next. So I do take requests. Let me know what interests you. All right, back in the book of Genesis. Started with creation, followed the first two people through their three sons, and then followed the lineage of Seth down to Noah. And what we saw is a rapid expansion of evil from Adam till the generation of Noah. I think that's an important thing for us to recognize. I think sometimes when people learn a little bit of Christian theology or get a little bit familiar with the Bible story as such, they think, well, that's not really fair that Adam and Eve sinned and I have to deal with that. I didn't do it. Okay, you would have. You would have. You might not now, because you've seen what that sin brings. You might not make the same choice now because you know the damage and hurt it would cause everyone, but they didn't understand damage and hurt. And even so, I'm not so sure you wouldn't, because we know the damage and hurt that our sin does and still do it. So that section of history from Adam to Noah, we see that played out continually throughout history. So things have gotten really bad, and God is grieved that he made the world. So he starts fresh, basically, with 8 humans and a breeding pair of most animals and 7 pairs of some of the animals. It seems to me like the fish mostly get a pass. I don't know. Hard to say. We know Noah had birds on the ark, but I doubt he had an aquarium. That just doesn't seem like it makes sense. Right. That's what I'm saying. After the flood, things start up again, and it doesn't take long before people forget or they don't revere God as they ought, right? And that we get that in the story of the Tower of Babel, where they think, we can plant, we can indelibly write our names in history and make sure that mankind is forever supreme. We can even, create a path to heaven that doesn't demand God's help. We've talked about the parallels of the Tower of Babel before. I'm not going to bother spending too much time on that. Just that be wary of anybody who offers you techno-utopian dreams, right? Beware of anybody who suggests to you that human progress is the road to paradise. From the Tower of Babel, it's a hop, skip, and a jump to the story of Abram, later Abraham. And it is to Abram that God delivers covenantal promises. Now, it's easy to think of Abraham as the starting place, but really, much of this began actually with Adam and Eve. Right? And the sort of cornerstone promise, the central highest promise from my perspective that God makes to Abram, that through Abram all the peoples of the world will be blessed, is actually just a reiteration of what God said to the serpent in the garden, that he was going to send a seed of Eve to defeat the serpent once and for all. It is through the line of Abram genetically that Mary will be born, and from Mary she will conceive Jesus. So we can put Jesus in Abram's family tree, at least as far as his humanity is concerned. Abram and Sarah have their children at an improbably old age, and they're doing all kinds of stuff in their 70s through hundreds that if I can do them in my 50s and 60s, I'll be feeling good about myself, in terms of all the travel they do and moving homes and all that kind of stuff. Eventually, they do settle down in Canaan with their son Isaac. Isaac gets a wife from Haran, back where Abraham is from. Y'all remember the story of the servants who went and had the women come and water the camels and that whole thing. So prayerfully, by God's appointment, Rebecca was selected. And she comes home, and she and Isaac have marriage and a life together, and eventually they have, it takes them a long time too, but eventually they have twin sons, not identical, Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau are about as different as they could be. Jacob is crafty and seems kind of like he's more of a homebody. Esau is more rugged, more of a sportsman, but also impulsive and unwise. And Jacob takes advantage of his brother and his impulsivity, taking his birthright, which deeply bothers Esau, but what's he going to do? He agreed to the terms. Jacob, with the help of his mother, then will later defraud Isaac as Jacob poses as Esau and receives from him the blessing that Isaac intended for Esau. And when Isaac realizes what happened, he is heartbroken and dismayed. Esau is murderously angry, and Jacob has to get out of Dodge. So he goes back to Haran to find a wife. And because apparently that's where you go to find a wife. So in Haran, he sees a beautiful young lady, Rachel, and he wants to marry her. And he serves her father, Laban, for 7 years. And so Laban has a wedding and marries off his daughter to Jacob. It's a beautiful love story. The years had flown by because he loved Rachel so much. So now they have the party. That night the wedding is consummated. And in the morning, Jacob rolls over and in the light of day sees that Laban's daughter, whom he just married, was Leah, not Rachel. So Laban pulled the old switcheroo. And now Jacob's on the receiving end of that. He goes to plead his case, and Laban's just like, well, around here we don't marry off younger daughters for older daughters, so I had to marry her to you first. But if you want to marry Rachel, you can still marry Rachel. It'll just take you another 7 years of service for me. Okay, guess so. You must really love Rachel, right? And I'm sure his wife, Leah, loves this. So he works another 7 years, marries Rachel properly, and then they're trying to have, terms for separating households. And Laban says, well, if you'll just work for me a little longer, I'll give you a portion of my flock. And then there's shenanigans about whose sheep are whose goats are whose. And as I read the story, it looks like they're both trying to get one over on the other guy. But God blesses Jacob all the same. And he finally realizes that he's never getting away from Laban unless he just kind of makes a getaway. And that's what he does. And when Laban finds out, he chases him down. And he's like, oh, you should have told me. Would have given you a going away party with fabulous parting gifts. And Jacob's like, okay, but I'm going, so bye. So Jacob heads back. He's going back to Canaan, back to where Abram and Isaac had settled down. But he knows he's going to be facing his brother soon, right? So he's wealthy. He's got two wives that he married, and then they're his wives according to Scripture, but they get treated as something lesser, and that is the servant of Rachel and the servant of Leah, who are his baby mamas. So he winds up with 12 sons, some daughters as well, spread out between 4 different women. And as he's approaching Esau, or where he expects to encounter Esau, he's like, okay, well, it's happening soon. So he breaks up his wealth into several stages, and he sends servants ahead and says, when you see Esau, give him this cattle, give him this stuff, and say, a gift from your servant Jacob. They do that a few times, and then he breaks up his own family into 4 pieces, 1 for each wife. And he's ready to go on across and meet Esau, but that night he encounters what is described elsewhere in Scripture as an angel. Here it's just said that he's a man, and he wrestles with him all night long. Stubborn, probably hardened by all his labor, manlier than when he left, I would imagine. He recognizes what's going on here, though. He knows that he's wrestling with God in some capacity. And the angel's like, okay, it's almost daybreak. We gotta ring the bell and end this round. So he pops his hip joint out of socket, or he injures it in some way. He injures his hip. And Jacob can't wrestle anymore properly, but he also won't let go. He's like, I not until you bless me. And the angel gives him a blessing and changes his name to Israel, which means struggles with God or wrestles with God. And so Jacob now has not slept all night, and he has an injury causing him to walk with a walking stick. Now he's going to face his probably murderous brother. When I tell you that the people of God, Israel is the name given to the people of God in the Bible. Israel is and has always been not a question of genetics, but a question of faith. This is how Jacob is walking right now. Exhausted from a night of wrestling, which is exhausting. I mean, a few minutes of wrestling is exhausting. And an injury. Going to face somebody who's probably ready to kill him. He's been waiting for 20 years to do it. He goes ahead of his family at the mercy of his brother and with nothing but his faith in God to shield him. And when he encounters Esau, Esau runs up to him and grabs him, and they have a nice cry. And Esau is overjoyed to see his brother again. And there's still a little bit of tension, a little bit of paranoia between them, maybe, just making sure that they're both on the up and up. But Esau gets to meet his sisters-in-law, his nephews and nieces, and it's sweet. They kind of go their own ways. We don't hear much of Esau after that. And now we are moving into the story of the next generation. So we're going to pick up in Genesis chapter 37 today. Genesis 37, verse 1. Jacob continued to live in the land of Canaan, where his father had lived. This is the account of Jacob and his descendants. By the way, for those of you who are familiar with the book of Exodus, the book of Exodus begins where, geographically? What's that? Somebody said it. Egypt, right. What is the situation of Israel at this time? They're slaves. It's been 400 years since the end of Genesis. They're slaves in Egypt. And where are they going to when they make their exodus, right? When they make their exit, where are they going to? Yeah, the promised land, which is Canaan. And, when I was a young man, a boy, and I didn't understand all the connections in these first few books of the Bible, I just assumed that Canaan was like a new place they'd never been. But it's actually a return to their ancestral home. They just had only lived there for 3 generations. Now it's been 400 years, so that's 20-ish generations. So they've been away longer than they ever lived there. But still, that land is their inheritance, right? That is the land that God took Abraham to, from where he was, where he went to. It's actually where Abraham's father was going. Remember, Terah was going on his way to Canaan, and he stopped in Haran. And God said to Abram, well, you're going to follow me all the way. So for Abraham, it was a foreign land. For the Israel of the book of Exodus, this is the promised land. Promised to whom? It was promised to Abraham. And when God made that promise to Abraham, we read this months ago, God said, I'm going to take you to a land that's going to be great, although you'll spend 400 years as slaves elsewhere. I think that was all in the book of Genesis already. Okay. This is the account of Jacob and his descendants. Joseph was a 17-year-old young man. He took care of the flocks with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. Joseph told his father about the bad things his brothers were doing. Okay, things that I always misremember. When I think about the story of the fancy coat, you want to say it's a coat of many colors, and we'll get there in a minute. It's probably a coat of sleeves, but we'll get there in a minute. I always picture him as like 12 or 8. He's 17. He's practically a man. Okay? So I forget that. I also think, he's just an innocent but naive kid. No, he's a tattletale. This is all we have in the story so far. He's 17, and Joseph told his father about the bad things his brothers were doing. What bad things? Doesn't say the bad things they were doing. He's a snitch. Yeah, Joseph only has one full brother, and that's Benjamin. And he will show up in this story a little bit later. Right now, Joseph is... we'll get there. Now, he's with Bilhah and Zilpah's sons, which means Rachel's son with Bilhah and Zilpah's sons, and not with Leah's sons. So Leah has the oldest sons, the first four. And then she also has the ones right around Joseph's age. But this does sound like it's kind of a half and half split, like 6 sons this way, 6 sons that way, more or less. 6 and 5 maybe, if Benjamin's too young to be working. I'm not sure. Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons because Joseph had been born in Israel's old age. So he made Joseph a special robe with, the ESV translation says, a special robe with long sleeves. We are conditioned to think that it's a coat of many colors, and the reason why is that the Vulgate translation, which is when they translated the Bible into Latin, translated it that way. That's probably not the best. If you're coming straight from the Greek, from the Hebrew, I think it said a coat of palms. But the idea is, all right, we've all seen Bible costumes. And I'm not saying these are biblically accurate, but you have like the under robe, and then they have that over thing, and it's almost always like a sleeveless thing that comes like to mid-knee. You know what I'm talking about? So it's probably that garment, but his goes all the way down to his feet, but it also probably has these nice long sleeves. Whether it's a coat of many colors or a coat with long sleeves or whatever it is, that's a curiosity, but it doesn't change the meat of the story unless you try to make something theological of the colors or something. But the word colors isn't in there, so I wouldn't do that. But here's what we know for sure. It's fancy and stands out. It's probably not work attire, right? If you've ever done any kind of manual labor, especially working with animals, maybe if you ever work on a car or something, do you want things that are hanging low on your arms? Why not? What's that? Okay, a dress code, but dangerous, yeah. And messy, yeah, they'll get dirty. If you're doing dirty work, those long sleeves are gonna be getting dirty, right? What matters is what is signified by this coat. And whether it's a fancy colored coat, if you're really hanging on to that, or a long whatever, it's clear that if he was a daughter instead of a son, this would be like him wearing a tiara everywhere, right? Like, oh yeah, he thinks he's a prince. He thinks he's better than us, whatever. Dad likes him better than us. We can all see that, He literally wears it on his sleeve. Joseph's brother, verse 4, Joseph's brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them. They hated Joseph and couldn't speak to him on friendly terms. Now, whose fault is that? What's that? Okay, it's Jacob's fault. Who else? Joseph? Yeah, I don't think I'd be friends with him either. If he's just all the time watching for what I'm doing wrong and going back and telling it to Dad, I don't think. Does that mean they have no responsibility? No. But all the stories in Genesis so far, I don't know that there's many that are just clearly the ones being wronged and with no blame on their own. Verse 5. Joseph had a dream. And when he told his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please listen to the dream I had. We were tying grain into bundles out in the field. And suddenly mine stood up. It remained standing while your bundles gathered around my bundle and bowed down to it." Okay. If he's 6 or 7, this story seems fine. He doesn't know. He's just a kid. He's 17, guys. Indiscreet. Yeah. And you can have the dream and not rub it in their faces. What are you doing, man? I get the sense that he's kind of insufferable. But look at his dad. What kind of a young man was his dad? He was kind of awful in his own way. But we've seen in the life of Jacob some humility enter in, some maturity. He actually grows from kind of a rotten young man into a person of character through hardship. God protected him and guided him. He used all that hardship to develop him in the way that he needed to be developed. I wonder if the same thing could happen for Joseph. Then his brothers asked him, "Are you going to be king or rule us?" They hated him even more for his dreams and his words. Did they interpret the dream properly? You don't know if you've never read the story before. Spoilers for a several thousand-year-old book. I hope you've already read it. Yes, they did interpret the dream properly. When he told then he told them another dream. He told his brothers, "Listen," he said, "I had another dream. I saw the sun, moon, and specifically 11 stars bowing to me." When he told his father and his brothers, his father criticized him by asking, "What's this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers come and bow down in front of you?" So his brothers were jealous of him. But his father kept thinking about these things. I think this is interesting that his dreams are being properly interpreted. I was talking to somebody just the other day, and they had a very vivid dream, and they wanted to know kind of what it meant. And, while I was happy to look at some of the elements of the dream, the first thing I asked was, well, what kind of media are you consuming right now? What's your sleep routine like? I think I forgot to ask, did you eat anything weird before you went to bed? Not every dream is meaningful, but some are. And his brothers and his dad, they get it right when they interpret the dreams. Now, that one could have been interpreted as more grand, right? The sun, moon, and stars bowed to me. Well, do you think you're going to be king of the world? But no, he gets it right. Oh, you think your mom and I are going to bow to you, and your brothers? You're going to be our king? And while his brothers hated this, his dad actually thought about it. Is he going to be our king? Are we going to bow down to him? His brothers, verse 12, his brothers had gone to take care of his father's flock at Shechem. Israel then said to Joseph, "Your brothers are taking care of the flocks at Shechem. I'm going to send you to them." Joseph responded, "I'll go." Does Jacob not see what's going on between his brothers and him? Or maybe he's just assuming the best, right? Like, yeah, they don't like him, but he's still their brother, whatever. Y'all know what's going to happen, right? And Jacob was portrayed as like a crafty guy in the beginning. But maybe he's got a blind spot here. I don't know. So Israel said, "See how your brothers and the flocks are doing, and bring some news back to me." What is Jacob? I'm sorry, what is Joseph here? What's his role? He's a snitch. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, at the very least, you could say he's like the foreman, the job manager, at the very least. But of all the people he's supervising, he's the youngest brother. If he's 17, some of his brothers are in their 20s, mid-20s. Would you want your 17-year-old younger brother managing you when you're in your 20s? What's up? Did you? Oh, man, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, I hope you handled it better than these brothers. When Joseph came to Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the open country. It's like Joseph's out there like, man found him wandering out in the open country. What are you looking for? The man asked. Joseph replied, "I'm looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they're taking care of their flocks." The man said, "They moved on from here. I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. Really nice when you have that friendly stranger with no name who gives you exactly what you need to get to the next plot point. They saw him from a distance. Before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. They said to each other, "Look, here comes that master dreamer. Let's kill him, throw him into one of the cisterns, and say that a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what happens to his dreams." Think with me for a moment. We've had a good handful of stories about brothers in the book of Genesis. Which one has the good, healthy, brotherly relationship? That's right. That's right. I mean, Cain and Abel. That's going to be a problem. Seth never knows Cain, basically, so that's out. Noah's 3 sons. There's a schism there. Obviously, we got Jacob and Esau. Well, we even have Isaac and Ishmael. I thought like brothers are supposed to be like, brothers. Yeah. You'd hope the brothers would be at least bros. Yeah. Oh, sure, yeah. They can't stand each other, but if anybody comes against them, they're all going to ride together, right? All right. When Reuben heard this, he tried to save Joseph from their plot. Let's not kill him, he said. Let's not have any bloodshed. Put him into that cistern that's out in the desert. Don't hurt him. Reuben wanted to rescue Joseph from them and bring him back to his father. All right, so Reuben is Leah's son. This is actually Jacob's firstborn. This is the oldest of Israel's children. So we know Reuben's here. We'll hear in a little bit from Judah. This is all of Israel's sons together now. Right? Remember we used to have 6 over here and 6 over here. I wonder how far back this whole thing was premeditated, right? Like, were the 4 sons that Joseph usually oversees, were they like, we gotta take care of this problem? And so they all got together with the other sons, overwhelming force or whatever. I don't know. Reuben's not having it. And, good on you, Reuben. He's the oldest, so he's probably the most mature. He's the oldest, and maybe he's less threatened by the whole thing, or just has less ego. I'm not sure. But being the oldest, his opinion probably has a lot of sway, right? Probably that as well. Yeah, he'd probably have to take more responsibility. So when Joseph reached his brothers, verse 23, when Joseph reached his brothers, they stripped him of his special robe with long sleeves. Then they took him and put him into an empty cistern. It had no water in it. As they sat down to eat, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Remind me, who are Ishmaelites? Abraham's sons through Hagar, right. Their camels were carrying the materials for cosmetics, medicine, and embalming. They were on their way to take them to Egypt. Okay, now I'm sure there's like some way to take symbolic meaning out of cosmetics, medicine, and embalming. But here's what I know for sure. They're like chemical suppliers. And it seems like it's mostly luxury goods. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right. And we're going to see that. Yeah, we're going to see that here in a little bit because he's going to be very confused when the pit's empty. So, yeah, we'll circle back to that in just a minute, but you're right. So these Ishmaelites are hauling what seems to be luxury goods to me. Who gets cosmetics? Think about ancient Egypt. Who gets cosmetics? The wealthy. Who gets embalmed? The dead. There's a lot of dead. Who do we find mummies of? Dave the carpenter? No, like pharaohs and stuff, right? Medicine, I don't know for sure, if that's a common good or if that's kind of reserved for the wealthy. But it seems like these guys, their trade is going to be with wealthy people, generally speaking. Judah asked his brothers, "What will we gain by killing our brother and covering up his death? Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. Let's not hurt him because he's our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed. Okay, The name Judah, does that poke out to you for any reason? Just from the whole story of Scripture? What's the deal with Judah? Yes. And some famous person comes from the tribe of Judah. Yeah. So Judah is Jesus' ancestor, right? And he's interested in sparing Joseph's life. And this one decision winds up being the cause of all the events that will lead to the fulfillment of the dreams that his brothers want to kill him over. And, fair play. They said, let's kill him and see what comes of his dreams. If they had killed him, then, those dreams probably would have been unfulfilled. Judah shows a kind of mercy, albeit maybe a self-interested one. Well, a dead guy's worth nothing to us. We could sell him and get something out of it. I do kind of wonder if Judah also is kind of with Reuben. It's like, I don't really want to kill him. I don't really want to kill him. But if you just leave him in a dry cistern and you go on your way, what's his fate going to be? And if Reuben hadn't talked to Judah about his plan, that might be what Judah is thinking is, but if we just leave him, he's still going to die. By the way, again, spoilers if you haven't read the story already, but by the time his brothers do bow down to him, they will be very glad that he's not dead. They will be very glad to be in the position they're in. So this actually works out well for them. They just don't see it yet. As the Midianite merchants were passing by, their brothers pulled Joseph out of the cistern. They sold him to the Ishmaelites for 8 ounces of silver. The Ishmaelites took him to Egypt. Now, the ESV gives you a weight translation to give you an idea of how much silver it is. But in the Hebrew, it actually would have said 20 silvers. I was really hoping it was going to be 30, because that would have been a really nice connection, from Judah to Judas. There's still something there. It's just not quite as... Well, yeah, maybe inflation's to blame. 30 shekels, but 30 shekels in today's money. Yeah. The Ishmaelites took him to Egypt. When Reuben came back to the cistern and saw that Joseph was no longer there, he tore his clothes in grief. He went to his brothers and said, "The boy isn't there. What am I going to do?" So, as it alluded to in the verses earlier, Reuben's plan all along was to get his brother out and set him free, whatever that might mean. Maybe he hadn't even worked out what that meant, but he didn't want to kill him, send him off into hiding or something. Who knows? Oh, it did say that, didn't it? Hold on. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep, bring him back to the father. I guess that way he has his father's protection. And now, if Jacob is unaware of his brother's intent, Jacob now will at least know what sending him out into the wilderness to find his brothers entails. Yeah. Thank you, though. Thank you for cleaning that up for me. So, Reuben comes back, and his brother's not there. So they took Joseph's robe, killed a goat, and dipped the robe in blood. Then they brought the special robe with long sleeves to their father and said, "We found this. You better examine it to see whether it's your son's robe or not." You can see this is still remnants of the old plan, right, to kill him. And it kind of makes me wonder if this is also part of what prompted the move to Dothan. That way they could say, "Oh yeah, well, we went out to Dothan, and when we came back through, there was this robe there. And his father put together the pieces. Oh, wow, yeah, no, he went there, he didn't find you, and he got mauled. This story it's a clever story, right? Because they're not even saying he's dead. They're just saying, we found this robe. You think it could be? He, that's Israel, recognized it and said, it's my son's robe. A wild animal has eaten him. Joseph must have been torn to pieces. Then to show his grief, Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth around his waist, and mourned for his son a long time. All his other sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. He said, no, I will mourn for my son until I die. This is how Joseph's father cried over him. Meanwhile in Egypt, the Midianites sold Joseph to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials and captain of the guard. Well, that's a great setup for what we're going to do next week. So we're gonna vault over Genesis 38, which is the story of Judah and Tamar. This is part of the story of Jesus' lineage. I think it's an interesting story, but I'd rather just stick in the narrative of Joseph so we can just keep it sharper. So feel free to read through Genesis 38. If you have questions or discussion items you want to, we can talk about it. But let's just we'll just keep rolling on with Genesis 39 next week. I'm actually 2.5 minutes over time, so we're going to call that good for now. Go ahead and freshen up your coffee, do what you need to do. Come on back for worship.